War photographer Semiha Es. Semiha Es is the first Turkish woman war photographer. She is also one of the first in the world and worked for half a century. She was born in 1912 in Istanbul during the Ottoman Empire period, 11 years before the establishment of the Republic. When she was 15, she started working at a French telephone switchboard operation to support her family. Her father, who worked at a French ferry company, had taught her a little of the language. A few years later, she tried to take part in a beauty pageant, but got turned down because she wasn't 18 yet. As she was walking down the stairs, she met a young journalist who was 2 or 3 years older than her, Hikmet Feridun Es, and it was love at first sight. Her mother didn't know that she was dating someone and had found her a rich factory owner as a husband candidate. Upon this, Semiha and Hikmet Feridun immediately got married, and Semiha went home the same evening to tell her parents the news, just like an old Yeşilçam movie script. By the way, Yeşilçam, which means green pine, is the general name of the old Turkish cinema, and produced some of the most iconic Turkish movies, like an old Hollywood. Feridun Es became a famous journalist and frequently worked overseas, which meant they would be separated often. As a solution, Semiha learned professional photography and started to photograph Hikmet Feridun's interviews. During 1940s, they met Franklin Roosevelt in the US. Semiha even took an unauthorized photo before she got held up by security. They stayed there for a while and made news about the famous actors in Hollywood. In 1950, Korean or Hanguk War erupted, and Türkiye sent military aid to South Korea. One of the reasons Korean culture is beloved in Türkiye is because of the friendly relations dating back. Hürriyet newspaper sent the couple to Korea. During the week, they would take photographs on the front, and at the weekend they would fly to Tokyo on a military plane. Semiha Es would sleep in the barracks dedicated to women journalists at the military bases, and travel on top of the crates of trucks filled with bombs. Turkish soldiers would call her mom, and ask her to send their letters along with the newspaper documents. In the interviews, she mentions that she would cover her hands in order to conceal her gender, and Korean women often walk with her for safety. At the embassy events, where everyone dressed up, she would wear her military clothing. Even though they had close brushes with death at the front, they continued to work. While she was photographing in the front lines, a Chinese soldier noticed her and tried very hard to kill her, but fortunately he failed. Turkish forces had a lot of casualties around Kunuri village. Her photographs that shows the war through the eyes of soldiers got published in the newspaper. Aside from the soldiers, she often photographed women and children who got most affected by war. Most of her photographs about the devastating results of war, such as people walking around their destroyed homes, frozen bodies of dead children, and soldiers saying farewell to their mothers, had not been published. Sometimes her name would be written under the interview's photos with tiny letters, and sometimes it was not written at all. Her fame was much less than her husband's. After photographing the Korean War for 3 years, she continued her work for 5 years during the Vietnam War, and 2 years during the Rwandan Civil War. She describes the Vietnam War as a total hell. She also photographed many unknown villages in Africa, and traveled to Far East, Europe, and Australia with her camera. She did photo interviews in Tahran through the eyes of women. The couple's journey all over the world for 50 years came to an end due to her husband's illness. He passed away at 1992. Semiha Es's photos got published in many different newspapers and magazines. But later, she got entirely forgotten for almost 20 years until her unpublished work resurfaced after she left her archive to journalist Özgün Levent. In 2011, she got Turkish Photography Artist Honor Award. She passed away at the age of 100. There's a beautiful Turkish saying for people who live over 100 years, asırlık çınar, which means a century-old plane tree. In 2013, Women's Museum Istanbul organized Semiha Es, the Women Photographers International Symposium at her 100th birthday, as a part of women's cultural heritage events. There are exhibitions, documentaries, and music compositions made in her name. Semiha Es is a woman who photographed wars and the world it leaves behind with her camera. She showed us the overlooked people of war as the first woman war and travel photographer of Türkiye.